Okay, good morning, traders. We'll see who's in there. Probably a little bit slow to come in. We'll see. All right, welcome to the Morning Playbook, Trade Setup Morning Playbook. We're going to take a look at current markets, just what happened overnight, and just a few key markets we've got our eye on. So to start off with, we're looking at the Hang Seng, Dow, and the SPY 200. So I'm just going to go through what expecting in the way of price action and where we expect to see some potential opportunities. Now, the Dow, obviously, Dow rallied quite hard last night, but it left behind the S&P and the Nasdaq. So the Nasdaq didn't bounce quite as hard as what most would have expected after that sell-off the previous session. So we've actually opened up. The Dow's opened and gapped up in their overnight session, which is I'm still struggling to find some positive news which has triggered that buying. I think it's a bit of an overflow from when you get a nice strong session up and it finished up on its highs. It's a good idea to gap up on the next day or in the morning session, the next session anyway. Keep getting confused. It is morning here, but in the US to gap up in the open and it could just drift lower all day because it's got a lot of buyers to sort of that are going to want to squeeze out. So we'll see what happens there in the Dow. Now, just quickly going over the SPY, expecting that because of the gap up on the Dow and the positive move in the Dow and the Hang Seng just after hours, the Hang Seng is coming into the open, so it's just the CFD prices we're watching, and that's pretty much going to follow the Dow lockstep until it opens at 11:15. So SPY will be open in about 5 to 10 minutes, 7 minutes to be precise. Expecting that washout, that flush in the open because of the bullish sentiment into the close of the US, and you can see that was a day session market, and you're getting some nice trades after hours, and then absolute chop during hours. You've got this sort of choppy action. It was washing down, and even when the Hang Seng was heading south, it was really getting sold hard on the open, which was about here. You got a bit of a push lower on the SPY, but it held up quite nicely and started to bounce. Okay, so that's a good sign. Good sign that the bulls want to push it higher. It started to chop through there, and pretty much late in the session, it gave up a lot of the gains to finish roughly where it started. Started up about here, finished about the same spot. So all in all, from start to finish, not much movement. But the action started to play out later on. We got this bit of a grind higher, a flush down again, and started to rally once the US kicked off. So the US kicks off about 11:30. The bulls come out to play in the Dow, and just from the open, just ramped it higher again. So, and that pretty much negated any of the weakness from the day session. All right, so we got the prices kicked off. Price actually kicked off. So we got pushing up into the high. So we're expecting the flush of this 59.60 zone. It's a good 59.60. It's a good 20 points or so away, but it can easily be done. In these kinds of markets, we might get a big push just after the open into these highs. Excuse me, and then it'll be interesting to see if we do get a bit of a sell-off late in the session. We could just get this range band chop, which is very hard to trade at this stage. Finding it kind of tough. To get a sell in there, you don't really, on the 5-minute chart, struggling to get the key setups that I'd like to see. You got this sort of chopping around, a pop higher, then a chop lower just to squeeze people out, and then bang, straight back up. So tough going on the SPY. We'll look at the Dow. You can see this gap up. So it's gapped up from around, say, 26.10, 20, just to give it a bit of leeway. And it gapped up, a couple hundred points. And it's traded up to this 927 level. So it's nearly 300 point gain. Now, not exactly sure why. I know Trump was talking after hours about coming down hard on China. It seems to be the US seems to be happy that he's picking a fight with China, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And he's talked up the phase 2 deal, saying they're not going to talk about that. There's no need talking about that at the moment, because as soon as they signed off on phase 1, China can come out and give the world the virus. So he's being pretty blunt in what he's saying and what he's accusing them of. Now, whether right or wrong, it doesn't matter. The market seemed to have taken that as a positive, unless there was something else that I'm not seeing. But yeah, we got that spike up into resistance, and I would suggest it's more that overflow for that positive mood into the close. The markets want to continue it on, and if you are looking to take some gains off the table, it's a good idea to gap it through these highs. This level here, 26.10, then you can sort of drift lower all session. It doesn't really matter, and you can just lock in some overnight session gains. Now we're expecting that. I'm still expecting that to drift lower. If it does come low and hold this support, I'm looking for the high low to push back up to the resistance zone. But at the moment, I'm expecting that to drift lower. Now, we may struggle for a setup. It's not too, there's not too much action up here, but we'll see. It might be kind of quiet until the Hang Seng opens. Now, the Hang Seng is obviously just following the Dow after hours. We've got this close, I think it was at 7 o'clock, and it's popped up along with the Dow, jammed higher. Now, these are not your futures positions, so I'm more expecting this level 25,580. We might get this price hovering around these highs, flush it out, flush up a bit higher, and then get sold into the same as what we did yesterday. So I'll be looking for more of a short bias on the Hang Seng. You can see that the action's been down. We're tracing back up, contracting back up. Now, if we hold in this zone, we could expect a big flush lower. I mean, you can see, where was it? Well, I'm on a 5-minute chart. What happened yesterday? That big flush down. All right, caught a lot of buyers off guard. We'll see if that can happen again and we get a flush down to 25.80, 580 or so. Anyway, over to the Dow. You can see that Dow is at some key resistance zone into the close, gapped up above that zone. So that's what I'm saying about all these longs built up. That's going to trigger a few buys. It's going to trigger a few bulls after hours. We might find that back and fill a bit. So back and fill, I mean, by just drifting lower. And there's a lot of buys stacked up here to get squeezed out of the action sooner or later before we start. If it is content to go higher, we're looking up at 27,422, thereabouts, which is previous highs from back in 10th of June. We could be looking for that move back up there. I'd rather see, I want to see, if I'm going to go long for that projection up there, I'll be looking for that higher low to build. I'm not going to be just buying it here willy-nilly because it could easily be a flush out of those highs and come into when the market opens. You can look at the Dow. That's up at that similar zone. So there's no reason why it can't finish above there and we gap down on the open and just flush right down. It looks bullish to me, don't get me wrong. And the market seems to just want to keep chugging higher, but we'll see how that goes. So you can see, we'll just go over the European markets. I mean, that's the FTSE. Doesn't look too convincing to me. It looks more, heavy, if anything. We've got these sort of inside levels. We've got another level potentially holding the action down at the moment. They seem to be selling off harder than they're rallying, whereas the US is rallying harder than it's selling off. All right, so pretty much most markets at the moment are all linked in, but they're all sort of just sitting there watching watching the US, the markets, the stock markets. Everyone knows they're overbought, they're overcooked, but no one's prepared to continue to try to guess the top. I mean, that guessing the top has got people squeezed out time and time again. So it's just what the recent action is doing. And even though we know the market's completely dislocated from fundamentals, it doesn't matter because you're willing to keep trying to pick the top and get squeezed out constantly. Right? So if you're going to go short, you've got to be really nimble. Okay, you can't be sitting there thinking I'm going for the big one and then turn around and get squeezed out. Okay, I go again, get squeezed out. By the time you might get it right, you're only making back previous losses. So that's why I think the market's very tentative to dive in short, because the market keeps getting, if any kind of worry they have, they just turn on the printing press and the market's buoyed again. They just talk about stimulus and up she goes. So there's sort of the bears are fighting stimulus, and when the bulls seem to be winning, but they're fighting the negative fundamentals. So sooner or later, I would expect that's going to take hold, but you just don't know where from. That's the biggest problem. But this is the Dow, like I said, is looking. Look, if you take off that, looking a bit toppy. It's looking pressured, but again, we'll just have to wait and see. The DAX is looking a bit more bullish than the FTSE, but that sort of choppy action is not conducive. You can see that's bullish. Big pullback, and all of this action has just been a grind and spiking up, flush out, spiking up, flush out, spiking up, flush out. It just seems to be biding its time before a potential big wave down. But we're watching that. So the dollar index, you can see we've spoken about this a few times. It's holding trend down. Now I adjusted this. I was looking at that sort of zone through there. It's flushed it out. It's come down. As it's made new lows, there's no need to worry about that. It's more. This is probably the sort of trend down that it's still holding, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. The market still seems content. The way I wouldn't have expected to get down to these lows, but it looks like it's, the way the market's going, it is pushing down there. We've held a lower high here at 96.30. Dollar index is still coming under pressure. As long as the bulls are out in the shares, the dollar's going down. All right, and gold in that respect will probably be held up. Let's just see where the SPY is then. It's just open. Yep, just open. There you go. Bang, and up she goes. So that's a massive flush. I would not ever buy into something like that. It makes it very hard when you get these big stretches in the open. Then you're sort of you're fighting the trend all day. All right, so the dollar index, see if they can grind lower. Just looking at a couple of currencies, the Aussie, that looks like that's just range bound at this stage. We'll see if it can. What it needs to do is drive through that resistance zone and pull back and retest. You don't need to keep flushing it out like that and then hold a lower high. Now, if we flush that and hold and start to look like we'll hold a lower high like previously, something like this, be a seller because it's range bound action. If we even hold a lower high from here, it's potential to go short and look for that range bound action. If you want to go long, I mean, you need to see some good consolidation under here. So what I'd be looking for, say we got that level there, I want to see something like this, chopping around and start to hold inside levels and expect that to jam straight up and through that resistance zone, say 70, 50 thereabouts, and extend a lot higher. But it needs to consolidate under that zone. I don't want to see this sort of grindy, keep chipping away at it, pushing up, and then coming back down because that's not conducive. It's like sellers are starting to step in constantly. But either way, again, it's all linked to the share market and the dollar. Now, euro, you could talk it up, whatever reasons for buying it. It's just purely a dollar move. This, if you go and look at the dollar in conjunction to the euro, it's exactly the same, but just pretty much exactly the same, but in reverse. So the euro is obviously they're getting supported by potential stimulus plan from the EU, but if the US dollar rallies, that'll be down. Stimulus or not, the euro will be down. Obviously, it's linked to that, but it's not getting independently bought up. I don't think they're buying the euro against other crosses. It's just the US dollar move that's driving the euro. Pound it's coming down quite hard. Even though the US dollar started to drift lower, it started to move lower. The pound was driving lower, and then as soon as the US market opened, bang, made back all the losses plus some. Okay, so it's really cleaned out this zone, which is quite handy. It's cleaned out that zone there. So I would expect this to, if we start to chop around here and hold some minor inside lower highs, then I'll be looking for, something like that, a drive back down to the support. But if we drive back down, then I'll be looking for something that you can hold. If you can see what I'm talking about, hold a key high or low off that zone for a press back up to, say 126.65. We'll just see how it goes. Manage it on the way up. If that's going to be the case, now your cryptos, they're pretty much moving around with the share market. So share market pops, Bitcoin's popping, and the bulk of the cryptos are popping as well. If it gets sold off, they're getting sold off. So we can see there's some resistance on Bitcoin at 93.30, around about that zone. It's been held down there, but it's spiking down and getting bought straight back, spiking and getting bought straight back up. So there is buyers, stepping in here. Whether they can hold it at a higher level is another question. Now, if the share market's going to get hit, it'll go straight through. No doubt about it in my mind. So we'll see that trend down. I mean, at the moment, it's been supportive. It looks to be supported. And a pop-up through 93, say 30, would lead you to test at least 94.60 and potentially higher to 96.70 or 80 zone. Okay, so it could be a goer on the long side. I mean, that looks fairly constructive of a buying opportunity. You've got the lows in place here, and buyers every time it spiked into this zone is slightly high, just around 9,000, below 9,000, it was getting sold, bought back up, and then it broke out of this trend. You can see that trend down. It's broke that. We've come back down and just flushed out some of these buyers in this trend up, holding. So the longer we hold this zone in here, say at 9,100 for argument's sake, the more likely I'm thinking it's going to pop up. But again, it's going to be linked. If we see too much share market weakness, then that'll sell off. All right. Last thing I just want to quickly touch on is our two favorites. We've got crude. Weakness in the crude was getting soaked up. You can see that flush down straight back up again, and that's purely linked to the share market now, and the dollar getting sold off. It's going to be supportive, but it's still struggling. It's still that 40 zone, which seems to be content with at the moment. and it's soaking up this sort of selling pressure. So we'll just see. It'll be interesting. Everything is interesting to me, interesting to see. So, but it is getting soaked up either way. But it's just finding, buyers off here are happy to sell it at 40, and any sellers that might want to step in are happy around this zone, looking for to see if they can get that break of the lows. If they don't, quick to get back out and bail. Okay, and then the last one is copper. Copper. Oh, there we go. Good little spike high, all in the back of the indices again. Okay, so this is what we spoke about. The previous session, that big sort of two-legged move down. Two-leggers, I mean one up and then down, and then you can see this has been a bit more tentative. That buying's been a bit more tentative on the way back up. It'll be interesting to see again if we can hold that inside level. Okay, if that starts to react and react with a lower high off there, I'm looking for a target down towards 289. Okay, so if we're sort of coming down and we try to go up again and we start to fail at a lower level, that's your shoulder trade that we've been talking about. Okay, shoulder off that, retest fail. You're looking for further weakness and see if they can drive down to at least these lows or potentially lower. It may be a big drive down to 281, thereabouts. But we'll have to wait and see. All right, guys, that's probably about all I wanted to touch on. Any questions, send us an email to support@tradesetup.com.au. Enjoy your day, and it'd be great if you can leave us a like if you enjoyed the video. Otherwise, we'll speak to you again tomorrow. Cheers, bye.